On March 4th, 2022, at 3 in the morning, a woman made a frantic 911 call. Her husband was not breathing. He was cold to the touch. But here is what makes this case truly chilling. Exactly 1 year later, that same woman would publish a children's book about grief featuring a father with angel wings watching over his family. The dedication read, "For my amazing husband and a wonderful father, may you rest in peace." But prosecutors say she is the one who put him there, and the murder weapon was a festive cocktail she made with her own hands. This is the story of Kouri Richins and the deadly Moscow Mule. Kouri Richins was the kind of woman people in Kamas, Utah noticed. A top-producing real estate agent, a mother of 3 young boys, and the public face of a family that seemed to have it all. Her social media overflowed with photos of smiling children, holiday breakfasts, and the steady rise of their dream home, a sprawling property on the edge of town, finished in early 2022. Friends and neighbors saw a couple celebrating milestones. Eric, her husband, closing on real estate deals with Kouri, the family posing in front of blueprints, champagne glasses raised to new beginnings. But behind the filtered images, something was shifting. In January 2022, Eric signed a new will. The notarized amendment filed with Summit County Probate Court quietly changed the fate of the estate. Instead of leaving everything to his wife, Eric's updated will directed that most assets would pass to a trust for their children, with his sister named as primary executor. The timing was deliberate, just weeks before the final payment on the dream house and months before Eric's death. The document carried his signature and the official notary seal, a silent record of doubt. Eric's family later told investigators he had grown uneasy. He confided to his sister that he was worried about his safety and had a bad feeling about Kouri. He asked her to keep a copy of the new will in a secure place away from their home. Probate records show Eric also changed the beneficiaries on a $1.9 million life insurance policy, removing Kouri as the direct recipient and naming the trust instead. The insurance company's confirmation letter, dated February 2022, arrived just days before Valentine's Day. Despite the legal maneuvering, Kouri maintained her public image. She arranged a lavish celebration when the family closed on their new house, inviting friends, posting congratulatory messages, and sharing updates about the boys' bedrooms and backyard plans. To outsiders, the Richins household looked like a picture of success, but the paperwork told a different story, one of control, suspicion, and the quiet rearrangement of millions in assets. The stakes were rising, even if no one outside the family could see it yet. But Eric's concerns went deeper than anyone knew. This was not the first time Kouri had allegedly tried to kill him. On Valentine's Day 2022, the Richins' home was filled with the signs of celebration, flowers on the counter, a special sandwich prepared by Kouri for Eric, and 3 young boys caught up in the excitement of the holiday. But within hours, the mood shifted from festive to frantic. Eric began to feel strange. His skin erupted in hives, his lips swelled, and his throat tightened until every breath became a struggle. Paramedics rushed him to the emergency room, where doctors scrambled to stabilize his airway and bring down the swelling. Eric's medical records from that night describe a severe allergic reaction, the kind that can turn fatal in minutes if left untreated. As he lay in a hospital bed, Eric said he thought his wife had tried to poison him. He did not say it lightly. In the days that followed, he confided in his sister and close friends, repeating his suspicion. He described the sandwich Kouri had made, the sudden onset of symptoms, and his growing sense that something was not right at home. Kouri offered an explanation that sounded casual, almost dismissive. She told family and medical staff that Eric must have had a reaction to THC gummies, edibles she said he had eaten earlier in the day. Toxicology screens, however, found no evidence of THC in Eric's system that night. The hospital discharge summary listed an undetermined allergen, but the diagnosis did little to calm Eric's fears. Text messages from that week reveal a man on edge. Eric told his sister he was afraid to eat or drink anything Kouri prepared. He started keeping his own snacks at work and avoided meals at home when he could. In one message, he said he was not crazy, but he knew what he felt, and he had never been that sick in his life. The Valentine's Day incident was never reported to police at the time. To outsiders, it looked like a medical scare, one of those freak reactions that sometimes strike without warning. But for Eric, the brush with death was a warning he could not ignore. He told his family, "If anything happens to me, check Kouri." 3 weeks later, that warning would become a prophecy. And this time, there would be no second chance. 3 weeks later, Kouri would get another chance. And this time, she would not fail. On March 3rd, the day began with celebration. The Richins family had just closed on their dream house, a sprawling property that Kouri and Eric had spent months building together. Friends and neighbors gathered that evening to toast the milestone, glasses clinking in the kitchen, laughter echoing down the halls. Witnesses later described Kouri as the center of attention, snapping photos, pouring drinks, making sure everyone had what they needed. But as the night wore on and guests drifted home, the mood shifted behind closed doors. After midnight, Kouri moved through the kitchen with a practiced calm. She mixed Eric's favorite drink, a Moscow Mule, vodka and ginger beer in a copper mug, saying it was a special treat to mark the new chapter. The detail would become critical. She prepared the cocktail after the final toast alone as the house quieted. Around 2:45 a.m., she handed Eric the mug and watched as he took his first sip. Within minutes, Eric started to feel unwell. According to phone records and police interviews, Kouri told investigators she left the bedroom to check on one of their sons who'd woken up crying. She said she returned to find Eric slumped over, unresponsive. At 3:02 a.m., Kouri dialed 911, her voice tight with panic, reporting that her husband wasn't breathing. Paramedics arrived 7 minutes later to a grim scene. Eric was cold to the touch, with no pulse and no sign of life. Efforts to revive him failed. He was declared dead before dawn, the celebration now a crime scene. The Moscow Mule, its copper mug still on the bedside table, would soon become the centerpiece of a murder investigation. Paramedics entered the Richins' home at 3:09 in the morning, moving quickly past the copper mug still sitting on the bedside table. Their run sheet recorded a man already cold to the touch, no pulse, no signs of life. They worked through the standard protocols, chest compressions, airway checks, cardiac drugs, but the monitors stayed flat. By 3:24 in the morning, Eric Richins was officially declared dead. The initial scene notes described nothing out of place, no obvious trauma, only a sudden unexplained collapse. But the real evidence would come later, in a laboratory across the county. Blood drawn by emergency medical technicians, sealed and logged in triple-locked containers, traveled through a tightly documented chain of custody. Each handoff was signed and time-stamped, from the scene to the medical examiner's office, then on to the state forensic lab. There, Dr. Allison Christensen ran the samples through a gas chromatography mass spectrometry analyzer, a machine designed to separate and identify even the faintest traces of toxins. The results left no room for doubt. Eric's peripheral blood contained 15 nanograms of fentanyl per milliliter, 5 times the dose that can kill an adult. The same concentration appeared in his eye fluid and central blood, eliminating the chance of a lab error or post-mortem artifact. No prescription opioids, no fentanyl patches, no medical history to explain such a massive overdose. The technician's quality control logs showed every control sample within range, every vial intact. Dr. Christensen signed the report herself, stating the findings were scientifically sound. The numbers told their own story. This was not a case of accidental exposure or a stray pill. It was a deliberate, overwhelming dose delivered in a drink at home while the rest of the house slept. The only question left was how Kouri Richins, a mother and realtor, had managed to get her hands on a substance so lethal it could kill with just a few grains. A digital trail began to unravel the mystery of how fentanyl found its way into the Richins household. Investigators traced a series of text messages between Kouri Richins and the family housekeeper Carmen Lauber, whose role would shift from domestic help to central witness. In the weeks before Eric's death, Kouri messaged Lauber about needing the mix, using coded language that prosecutors later argued referred to illicit drugs. On February 5, 2022, blockchain analysis revealed a Bitcoin payment of 0.015 Bitcoin, about $350 at the time, sent from a wallet connected to Lauber. The transaction matched vendor records from a dark web marketplace known for shipping high-potency fentanyl to buyers across the country. Witness testimony filled in the next steps. Lauber described making a pickup at a Salt Lake City convenience store on February 13th, just a day before Eric's first medical emergency. Surveillance footage logged as evidence showed her entering the store and leaving with a small insulated bag. Store receipts matched to Lauber's employee card documented the purchase at 9:45 in the morning. Two witnesses later confirmed seeing her hand off the bag to a man driving a black SUV, who then delivered it to the Richins home. Forensic analysts added another layer. Deleted texts recovered from Kouri's phone included instructions to Lauber about dosage, with one message saying, "Make sure it was the right amount, 5 times what we had discussed." Analysts authenticated these messages, confirming their timestamps and carrier data could not be altered without detection. The court admitted screenshots showing the planning window lining up with the February and March incidents. A controlled buy from the same vendor verified the substance's purity, confirming the pills contained fentanyl at the concentration described in the texts. The chain of custody for both the controlled sample and the package linked to Lauber was airtight, documented from vendor to delivery to the forensic lab. Piece by piece, the evidence mapped a path from a cryptocurrency wallet to a copper mug on a bedside table in Kamas, Utah. The supply chain was no longer a mystery, it was a matter of record. Money moved quietly behind the scenes, even as the Richins family projected the image of a perfect life. In the months before Eric's death, a $1.9 million life insurance policy became a silent presence in the background. Paperwork showed Kouri as the original beneficiary, but Eric made changes, redirecting the payout to a trust for their children, cutting her out of the direct windfall. The insurance company's confirmation letter, dated just before Valentine's Day, arrived at their home like a warning no one else could read. Money, financial records uncovered another layer. A mortgage refinance application bearing Eric's signature was filed after his death. Forensic handwriting analysis flagged it as a forgery. Bank statements showed Kouri would have gained a lump sum payment if the loan went through. The application, submitted in April 2022, would have placed hundreds of thousands of dollars more under her control, bypassing probate and the safeguards Eric tried to build. But the money was not the only motive prosecutors would argue. Testimony and phone logs revealed Kouri's relationship with a man identified in court as Wright, a freelance photographer. Hotel receipts and call records mapped secret meetings and late-night conversations. In court, Wright described Kouri talking about a clean break and impatience for the insurance payout. Their relationship, prosecutors alleged, was not just an escape, but a reason to erase obstacles. Secret. Then, almost 14 months after Eric's death, Kouri published her children's book, Are You With Me? The dedication called Eric a loving father, watching over his family. The publishing contract listed Kouri as the sole author and recipient of royalties, with no mention of a trust for the children. The book's release in May 2023, while the investigation was still active, drew outrage and ethical debate. Child advocacy groups called for the proceeds to be frozen. Journalists and ethicists questioned whether anyone should profit from a tragedy still under criminal scrutiny. Book in the courtroom, prosecutors laid out this tangled web: life insurance, a forged mortgage, a hidden lover, and a book about grief. Each piece, they argued, pulled Kouri further from the role of grieving widow and closer to someone who saw opportunity in loss. Opportunity. Prosecutors began their case with a simple promise: the evidence would reveal a pattern of planning, motive, and execution. They started by showing the jury a series of text messages between Kouri Richins and her housekeeper, messages that prosecutors said were not about cleaning supplies, but about drugs. Jurors read Kouri's coded requests for the mix and instructions to make it 5 times what they had discussed. Each message was time-stamped and authenticated by digital forensics experts who walked the court through the recovery of deleted texts and the hash values that proved their integrity. Next came the toxicology report. Dr. Allison Christensen, the state's lead forensic toxicologist, took the stand to explain that Eric's blood contained 15 nanograms of fentanyl per milliliter, 5 times the amount needed to kill an adult. She detailed the chain of custody for every sample, from the moment paramedics drew Eric's blood to the final laboratory analysis. The prosecution displayed chromatograms, calibration logs, and the signed custody forms, all entered into evidence to show the science was airtight. The state then moved to motive. Jurors saw copies of a life insurance policy worth $1.9 million. The will amendment removing Kouri as beneficiary, and the forged mortgage documents. Bank records and handwriting analysis reports followed, each exhibit stacking the financial pressure Kouri faced in the months before Eric's death. The prosecution argued that the combination of digital footprints, chemical proof, and money trails left no room for coincidence, only a path leading directly to Kouri Richins. Defense counsel pushed back against the prosecution's narrative with a different story, one that raised questions about both the science and the process. Lead attorney Catherine Nestor argued that Eric's death could have been a tragic accident, not murder. She pointed out that Eric struggled with back pain and had access to prescription medication, suggesting the possibility of undisclosed drug use. The defense called forensic toxicologist Brianna Peterson, who testified that post-mortem redistribution can sometimes cause fentanyl levels to rise after death, especially if the drug moves from tissues into blood. Peterson also noted that the presence of norfentanyl, a breakdown product, might not always indicate intentional ingestion at one time. Chain of custody procedures became a battleground. The defense cross-examined the state's lab technician about the storage and handling of Eric's blood samples, questioning whether the vials could have been contaminated or mislabeled in transit. They highlighted that no fentanyl residue was found on Eric's clothing, skin, or in the surrounding bedroom, raising doubts about the source of the drug. Objections were raised over the admissibility of certain text messages, with the defense arguing that metadata could be manipulated and that digital forensics should be independently audited. Throughout the trial, the defense pressed the idea of reasonable doubt. They suggested that the prosecution's case relied too heavily on circumstantial evidence and that a single airtight explanation for Eric's death was far from certain. Their strategy was clear. If even one link in the forensic chain was weak, the entire case could collapse. Tonight, a mother's words are evidence, and a picture book becomes a crime scene. In a world where grief can be weaponized, every gesture of mourning demands a second look. The line between victim and perpetrator blurs in the harsh light of forensics and motive. So, is Kouri a widow or something far darker? Tell me what you believe in the comments below.